Hey guys, so my name is Leon, and today we're going to be going over round two of another NBA playoff series I want to preview. This time we're going to be going over the Western Conference, the first Western Conference playoff series, which will be starting on September the 3rd, Thursday. I'm going to be talking about the number two seed Los Angeles Clippers versus the number three seed Denver Nuggets. And as you all know, the Denver Nuggets just beat the Utah Jazz on the 1st of September, which was Tuesday, in the game seven, which is a 10 series back and forth between Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray went off. He killed it out there. I mean, let me just read to you some of the averages he had. So from August 17th, game one, Utah to September the 1st, game seven of Utah. So let me just read you the first stat from game one to game seven. So Jamal Murray went for 36 points, 14, 12, 50 in game four, 42 in game five, 50 in game six, and then 17 in game seven. You know, he calmed down a little bit, but he had 36 points, 50 points, 42, and 50. And in those games, Jamal Murray, when he goes off like that, the Denver Nuggets are 3-1 in those games. So he killed it out there. So did Donovan Mitchell. And, you know, Denver, I was surprised that they came back, but good for them. Denver, on paper, did have more talent than Utah. Utah, to me, my problem with them is they only had five, six, at most seven playable guys on their team at the moment, especially the Jazz lost both Bogdanovich for the season because he got hurt, I think, sometime in the summer or late spring. I don't know. But anyways, Utah didn't have the players on the bench that will sustain them over this first round series. Well, Denver had more talent overall. So Jokic, who is a real franchise player of the team, did very well. Even though he wasn't the main guy, Jamal Murray carried the team in the first round series. Anyways, with that being said, they go up against the Clippers, who I pick to win the West. Cause you know I like the Kawhi Leonard Paul George duo. Yeah, people was talking smack about Paul George, like oh he couldn't shoot, oh he's having this terrible game, Luca, and everybody was killing them, whatever. But the Clippers overcame, and now we're here. So now we're up against the Denver's up against the Clippers. So let's go. Let's preview the series a little bit, and let's go to what I think will happen. So let's start off with the number two seed Los Angeles Clippers. Let's just pull up the roster a little bit. As you see, the roster's there. The starting lineup, you know, it's predictable. Um, so far, I think since Patrick Beverly would be the normal starter, but since he hurt, they have Landry Shamet starting at point guard, which I think it's a suitable replacement for the time being. Landry Shamet is a calmer guard. He can play either guard pretty decently. You know, he's more of a shooter. He can play point guard fine. And you have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George run the offense anyway, so you don't need him to like run the offense or do whatever. You just need him to be a decent two-way player. You need him to make his shots and play decent enough defense to be out there. And I think he's a better option starting than Reggie Jackson. So, anyways, High Challenge your point guard. Paul George is your shooting guard, technically, even though he's a small forward. But Kawhi is more of a small forward than Paul George, I guess. But they're both threes. It doesn't matter. Kawhi, Paul George either can play shooting guard, you can play small forward. It doesn't matter. Marcus Morris is your power forward, which at this point, Marcus Morris is the better twin than Markieff, who's on the Lakers. And he's a more offensive skilled twin now, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but they're both pretty younger. When they was younger, they both was pretty solid NBA players. But Markieff has looked worse, for lack of a better term, than Marcus. Marcus Morris, before he got traded to the Clippers, was killing on the Knicks. And I'm glad the Knicks traded him because Knicks needed to get those minutes to the younger guys. But that's another story for another day. Zubac is a center. He's a fill-in starting center until they play their sixth or seventh man, Marcus Howell, who is kind of undersized, so that's why he can't start. But Marcus Howell is a good player. Lou Williams is healthy, he's out there. Reggie Jackson, like I mentioned before, is part of the bench. And then they have, you know, guys like, you know, Jermichael Green, Patrick Patterson, guys like that. Joakim Noah's on his team. You know, he's not going to play unless it's an injury. They get throw in the young guys, Terrence Mann, McCarthy, but those guys won't play as much. Just think of like Patrick Patterson, not Lance Shannon, because Lance Shannon started. Patrick Patterson, Jamaica Green, Lou Williams, and Reggie Jackson as the bench guys. So they go with a majority of times a 9-man rotation, which is a solid 9-man rotation. And my argument with the Clippers is that they're the deepest team in the playoffs. They have the most talent, like I would say from 1 to 8 or 1 to 9. And when Patrick Barry gets back healthy, they have a solid 1 through 10 rotation where they can put Landry Shamet after the wings, so you can play him as a backup 2 or backup 3 because he got decent size for it, even though he can play point guard as well. But let's just go through some of the offensive stats real quick. So let's just see. Okay, yeah. So for their stats, they're 10th in field goals made a game. They make 41.6 per game. They're 13th in 3 points made, which they make 12.4 a game. And then they're number 1 in 3 throws attempted and 3 throws made. I think you see the numbers right there. 3 throws made per game is 20.8. 3 throws attempted is 26.3. So they get to the line a lot, which is solid. And then number 4th in offensive efficiency, like 116.3 points a game, which it's not surprising. They're pretty solid, you know. And then let's go to their opponent stats. So they are third in opponent field goal percentage allowed. They only allow 43.8% from the field. Like they only allow the opponents to score that much percentage wise, which is good. And they're 13th in points allowed. They only allow 109.9 points a game. Solid numbers. And then they're and then the 2 point percentage that they allow opponents. They only allow the opponents to shoot 49.9% from 2 point percentage, which is pretty impressive defensively. They got pretty good wing defenders, solid. Guys like Patrick Beverly and Ryan Shamet, solid defenders as well. And they got, Marcus Harry, he's undersized, he's a solid defender. Marcus Morris, guys like Jamaica Green, Patrick Patterson, solid defensive guys too. But yeah, there's nothing. Not it's not to say there's nothing more to say, but there's pretty much Clippers is all around solid championship contender. I may pick them in the series, but with that being said, let's move on to the Denver Nuggets. So the Nuggets throughout the first round series was Utah. They initially, here's the roster by the way. They initially started Michael Porter Jr. at the 3 with Torrey Craig, with Jamal Murray at playing point, with Jokic and Paul Millsap. And Paul Millsap, by the way, he's gotten old, but he's a veteran, so that's why he's still starting. Blah blah blah. So, but the first few games, that was the starting lineup. But then, Gary Harris returned and Monte Morris, who's initially the backup point guard for the team, is pretty good backup, and I'm starting. So they decided to go with a 2-man point guard lineup, moving someone like Jamal Murray to the shooting guard since he's a little taller and he's more of a shoot first point guard, whatever. Monte always plays shooting. It doesn't matter. One of us plays shooting guard. And then they moved Torrey Craig to the bench. And then they also, instead of having Michael Porter Jr. start, they have him come off the bench. And then they played someone like Jeremy Grant, Grant is pretty great. He's a solid 2-way player, more defensive guy, and offensively he can make some threes. He do some things, but he's more of like a role player, and he was on Oklahoma City last year. But yeah, and then they still start Millsap and Jokic. And speaking of Millsap is expiring, I think. So Denver has not difficult decision. They have an interesting one, which if they want to keep Millsap past this season, wherever this season ends, whether they lose the Clippers or whatnot. So that's another conversation for another day. He'd be a great veteran to have on a decent deal. Don't overpay him. But anyways, with Denver, they pretty much gonna go with the lineup that they finished the season, finished the series in Utah with the Torrey Craig off the bench, go with 2 point guards, Jeremy Grant at the 3, Millsap at the 4, Jokic at the 5, and then you have Michael Porter Jr. Guys like I said, Torrey Craig on the bench, and then Gary Harris too. Gary Harris coming back into the series really helps them because even though he's a naturally shooting guard. He could play point guard too and the three, so he has more versatility on the wings and the guard spots. So pretty solid guy. And then they have Mason Plumlee, who I wish Portland kept. He's the guy that they traded for Nurkic. I think, yeah, they traded him for Nurkic, and Nurkic, I like Nurkic, but Nurkic hasn't really stayed healthy for Portland. While Mason Plumlee, yeah, he's a role player, but Mason Plumlee can pass and he's more durable for them. But Nurkic is a better player. But that's another conversation for another day. Anyways, Mason Plumlee is part of the bench. I mentioned Torrey Craig, Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr., and there's some appearances from PJ Dosa, who's a third string point guard, he's a tall point guard kind of, and then they play Bobo one game, and then Big Stout, whatever, and Troy Daniels, like guys like that. Like Denver has a decent amount of talent on their roster, so they're not like Utah, where Utah had to rely on Jordan Clarkson and Mary Mudiay, which is, ugh, no offense. But anyways, Denver's a deep team. But with that being said, let's go to the stats a little bit. So their stats is pretty interesting. Their field goals, I think, per game, they make 42 exactly, and they're 8th in the league in that. The field goal percentage is 4th in the league with 47.3, solid numbers. Their 2-pointers, the 2-pointers they make per game is 5th with 31.1. 2 points attempted, a 2-point percentage is both 6th in the league. And their points per game, which is kind of weird, it's only 19th in the league. Let me look at the 3-pointers. Oh my God, they cannot shoot. The 3-point percentage is terrible. They only make 11, I think, a game, which is 24th in the league. Attempted only 20, like not 26. They only attempt 30, about 30 of a game, which is 26. Their percentage is actually borderline halfway, 35% from 3. That's their offensive numbers, and they're, like I said, 19th in the league with 111.3 points a game. It's not bad. It scored a decent amount. And now the defense is, let's look at the defense. So I just saw the number 1 in defensive rebounding. Opponents allow defensive rebounding, so the opponents don't rebound well against them. Also, they only allow 109.2 points, which is lovely, just outside the top 10. Let me see. Their opponent's field goal percentage is 46.3, it's 15th in the league. So their numbers are pretty okay. But yeah, with that being said, let's just get into the predictions. I think Denver's gonna be a little bit groggy from playing 7 games in Utah. So I'm picking the Clippers will win in 6 games because I'm not confident in, like, I like the Clippers. I feel like the Clippers start to get the groove back. Clippers went through it with Luka, so the Clippers are in the groove, but it's gonna take them a while to pull away this Denver team, because Denver with Jokic can give them mismatch problems. Zubac is not a perfect defensive player. Zubac that will have some issues containing the Jokic, and then Montrezl Harrell too small to really lock up Jokic. But I think in other areas, especially the Clippers can lock down, like a Jamal Murray, for example. Especially Patrick Beverley returns, forget about it. But yeah, I think Denver is going to get them a fight, but Denver's going to ultimately lose 6 games. And that's my prediction. But anyways, with that being said, thank you guys for listening or watching this video. Hope you guys enjoy. There's going to be one more second round playoff preview coming soon. That's going to be whoever wins out of the Oklahoma City Comic-Con is on Wednesday night. Yeah, whoever wins out of OKC and Houston versus the Lakers. So just look out for that one. And adios. Thank you for watching.